On a rainy night, she finds an unconscious and injured man in an alley and decides to help him. But the mysterious man, without revealing his true identity, pretends to be a poor and humble man to win her heart. Follow this story until the end to find out everything that happens next. And before you start, subscribe to the channel and leave a like so you don't miss the best drama stories. Soo-ah, a young nurse in her mid-20s, wakes up every day at 5 a.m. to face the exhausting routine of her hospital job in Seoul. Her life is peaceful, but shadowed by a sadness she has carried ever since losing her family in a tragic accident when she was a teenager. Since then, Soo-ah has learned to look at the world with mistrust, especially toward the rich and powerful, who she feels live in a distant, indifferent reality. Her family now consists of her colleagues at work and a few close friends who share with her the struggles and joys of daily life. One rainy night, after a long and grueling shift, Soo-ah decides to walk to the bus station. The downpour is relentless, lightning occasionally lighting up the dark sky and thunder echoing through the empty streets. Soo-ah pulls her hood over her head, bracing against the cold and raindrops that won't stop soaking her. She's so focused on getting home that she almost doesn't notice a figure lying on the ground in a nearby alleyway. Something inside her, perhaps her nurse's instinct, makes her pause and take a closer look. When she approaches, she sees a man sprawled on the ground, his hair and face drenched in rain, a cut on his forehead, and a pained expression on his face. Soo-ah hesitates, looking around to see if anyone else is nearby, but the streets are empty. She knows she can't leave him there. So, pushing through her own fatigue, she crouches down next to him. The man's face is partially covered by his wet hair, and he seems unconscious. Carefully, she checks his pulse and then gently shakes him. "Hey, are you okay?" she murmurs, hoping for a response. The man's eyes flutter open briefly, but he looks disoriented and unable to respond. Soo-ah sighs, realizing that he's too weak to walk on his own. With some effort, she helps him stand, supporting his weight on her shoulder, and leads him to the hospital, her feet slipping in puddles as rain continues to pour over them. At the hospital, she finds an available bed and carefully lays him down. He looks more comfortable, though he's still unconscious. Soo-ah calls a doctor and quickly explains the situation. Since the hospital is in a modest neighborhood, none of the staff recognize him. To them, he's just another anonymous patient in need. Soo-ah takes charge of his initial care, cleaning the cut on his forehead and covering him with a blanket to keep the cold at bay. As she works, she notices that, despite his simple clothes, there's a certain elegance about him. Perhaps it's the way he carries himself, or the impeccable cut of his hair, but something about him feels different from the usual patients. Once she's finished, Soo-ah heads to the staff lounge, allowing herself a few minutes to reflect on what just happened. Something inside her feels shaken. Maybe it's the fatigue, maybe the tension of the shift. She never imagined that on an ordinary night she would end up rescuing a stranger from the streets. A few hours later, when the rain has finally let up, the man regains consciousness. He blinks a few times, disoriented, trying to make sense of his surroundings. The soft lighting and the calm of the hospital room contrast with the noise and confusion in his mind. The first person he sees is Soo-ah, standing beside the bed, watching him attentively. She looks relieved to see him awake. "How are you feeling?" she asks in a professional yet gentle tone. He takes a moment to respond, still processing the situation. He looks around as though trying to understand how he got there. His expression, initially one of confusion, slowly shifts to something more introspective, almost guarded. "Where am I?" he asks, his voice hoarse and faint. "You're at the hospital," Soo-ah replies. "I found you in the street and brought you here. It looks like you had an accident." She gestures to his forehead, where a bandage now covers the cut. He touches the bandage, surprised by her gesture, as if he's not used to such unexpected kindness. Soo-ah notes his hesitation but remains calm, acting as she would with any other patient. In a world that taught her resilience, helping someone without expecting anything in return is only natural. "Thank you," he murmurs, his gaze on her filled with an intensity that leaves her a little unsettled. Unbeknownst to her, he's deeply intrigued by her attitude. Why would someone like her care about helping a stranger? She gives him a polite smile and begins to walk away, thinking her work is done. But before she leaves, he stops her. Wait, what's your name? Soo-ah looks at him, surprised by the question. She hesitates but decides to answer. My name is Soo-ah. He repeats the name softly, as if committing each syllable to memory. Not knowing how to react to this slightly unusual situation, Soo-ah bows lightly and exits the room. She tries not to think too much about this strange encounter, but something about the man's gaze lingers in her mind, sparking a curiosity she doesn't yet understand. In the days following his hospital stay, Kang Ji-hoon, the billionaire heir and CEO of a major tech corporation, cannot get Soo-ah out of his mind. The nurse who had helped him without knowing who he was had shown a genuine kindness he had never experienced before. A warmth his life of business, coldness, and self-interest had never offered him. Fascinated by this experience, he decides to return to the hospital, but this time not as Kang Ji-hoon, the billionaire. He returns as an ordinary man. To do so, he takes on a simple and humble identity, Kang Min-soo, a name as inconspicuous as he could come up with, without any of the grandeur attached to his true title. He dresses in modest clothes and wears a cap to hide his stylish haircut. It's an impulsive decision, but Ji-hoon doesn't let himself overthink it. He only knows he needs to see her again, to understand more about this person who had helped him without asking for anything in return. He doesn't know exactly what he's looking for, but he believes that by getting closer to her as a nobody, he can get a taste of a different life, and perhaps an unexplored side of himself. When Ji-hoon returns to the hospital, he walks up to the reception area, glancing around to see if he can find Soo-ah. After a few minutes of waiting, he finally spots her, busy organizing files and directing other nurses. The sight of her makes him smile, though he quickly pulls himself together and tries to look like a regular patient, pretending to be there for a consultation. He waits until she finishes her tasks and then, hesitantly, approaches her as if they're meeting for the first time. Soo-ah, right? He says with a shy smile. She looks at him, initially confused, but soon recognizes him as the man she helped the previous week. Oh, it's you. Are you feeling better? She asks, her tone genuinely concerned. Ji-hoon nods and, to her surprise, asks if they can talk for a while. Soo-ah is taken aback by the request, but something in his sincere expression convinces her that he means no harm. They sit together on a bench in the hospital garden, and he makes up a simple story to explain his presence, saying he has no family in the city and is here just passing through. He thanks her for what she did and admits that he was moved by her kindness. Soo-ah becomes flustered and brushes it off, saying she was only doing her job as a nurse. But Ji-hoon notices that she genuinely doesn't expect anything in return. The more he speaks to her, the more he feels compelled to keep his identity hidden, hoping this closeness will allow him to truly get to know her. And for the first time in his life, Ji-hoon finds himself acting differently, almost innocently. In the days that follow, he continues visiting the hospital, inventing various excuses just to see her again, like a mild ache or follow-up consultations. He acts like any other ordinary patient, but always takes the chance to strike up conversations. Slowly, Soo-ah begins to notice that this special patient seems more interested in her than a typical patient might. Initially, she thinks it might just be her imagination, but over time she realizes he has a genuine curiosity in his eyes. During one of these encounters, they sit in the hospital cafe, and Ji-hoon shares fictitious stories about his life as Kang Min-soo, a regular guy just passing through the city. He fabricates a modest background, omitting his real fortune and influence. Soo-ah listens to his stories and gradually begins to trust him, believing that he is just as simple as she is, perhaps someone who shares her views on life. As time passes, Soo-ah unconsciously lets down her guard. She starts to share some of her own stories, including the accident that claimed her family and left her financially ruined, and how those responsible were never held accountable. This has fed her resentment toward the wealthy. She explains that ever since then, she's developed a negative view of the rich, seeing them as indifferent and cold, concerned only with their own gains. Ji-hoon absorbs her words in silence, reflecting on the harsh reality of her experiences and how deeply her life has been shaped by the divide between the wealthy and the ordinary. Even so, Ji-hoon feels he's growing closer to Soo-ah, and this closeness stirs feelings he didn't expect. He finds himself torn between wanting to reveal his true identity and fearing that doing so will hurt her. He finally has a chance to experience genuine connection with someone who doesn't care about his money or status. Every meeting with her feels like he's rediscovering himself, a version of him that he has never had the courage to explore before. Soo-ah and Ji-hoon, still under the guise of Kang Min-soo, start meeting more frequently. With each new conversation and outing, their relationship strengthens, and a mutual affection begins to bloom. Soo-ah, who has always been careful with her emotions and kept her distance, starts to realize she feels differently around Min-soo. He brings a sense of calm and lightness to her routine, someone who seems to understand her in a way no one else has. One evening, after Soo-ah's shift ends, Ji-hoon suggests they take a walk in the park near the hospital. As Min-soo, he keeps their outings humble, far from the fancy restaurants and exclusive events that usually mark his life as a billionaire. They sit on a simple bench, sipping hot coffee from a nearby vendor, laughing and watching passers-by. "You know, Soo-ah," he says hesitantly, "sometimes I feel like this simple life is something I've always wanted to try." "Really?" Soo-ah laughs, unaware that there is a deeper truth behind his words. "I've always thought a simple life is all anyone needs to be happy. But I guess you've had a hard life, so you probably appreciate it more." Ji-hoon just nods, avoiding further conversation to keep from contradicting himself. He notices how Soo-ah looks at the world with a realistic but gentle perspective. Life has made her strong and wary, yet she remains truly kind and selfless. For him, used to seeing everything through a lens of business and pragmatism, Soo-ah represents a new, exciting world. Yet, with each step he takes closer to her, the guilt grows. He feels dishonest because even as he draws close to her sincerely, he's still bound by the lie he created. Meanwhile, Soo-ah struggles silently with her own feelings. She tries to maintain her composure, convincing herself that what she feels for Min-soo is nothing more than friendship. But her heart can't hide the truth. She feels something deeper, something that begins to seep into her thoughts and emotions. However, she's hesitant to fall for anyone, especially given the deep-seated mistrust she has toward the wealthy. Though Min-soo seems to be an honest, good-hearted man, her wariness still clouds her perceptions. One day after her shift, Ji-hoon decides to surprise Soo-ah with a small bag of traditional sweets he bought from a neighborhood bakery. He finds her as she leaves the hospital and hands her the bag, smiling shyly. "These are for you, Soo-ah. I thought you might like them." She takes the bag, surprised and touched by the unexpected gesture. Inside, she finds a selection of sweets she used to share with her family before the accident. These simple, nostalgic treats stir a wave of emotions she hadn't expected. "Min-soo, how did you know I liked these?" she asks, trying to hide her reaction. Ji-hoon hadn't known about the deep personal connection she had with those sweets. He had simply thought they'd make a nice, sweet gift. Yet seeing her reaction, he realizes he struck something meaningful without intending to. "Guess I just got lucky," he chuckles, unaware that the gift means much more to her than he could have imagined. Slowly, Soo-ah starts to drop the last of the barriers that prevented her from trusting him. In a quiet, intimate conversation one night, she opens up to him completely, sharing the pain of her past. She tells him about the accident that claimed her family's lives, about how those responsible were never held accountable, leaving her with resentment. Min-soo listens in silence, feeling both small in the face of her pain and guilty for being a part of the world she despises so deeply. "Since then," Soo-ah says, voice trembling, "I've always thought that rich people live in their own world, where everything revolves around them. They never see those who are suffering. I'm sorry. Maybe it's just my experience talking. I know there are exceptions, but it's hard to forget." Her words hit Ji-hoon hard. For years, he handled the world of business with coldness and calculation, ignoring the emotional impact of his decisions on people like her. For the first time, he sees his life from her perspective and feels an urgent need to change. Despite this, his guilt and fear only grow. He thinks of confessing the truth, but fears hurting her, especially now that she's opened up and is trusting his simple identity. He worries about losing the only person who seems to care about him for who he truly is. Soo-ah, without realizing it, has become his safe harbor, a person he never wants to lose. As the days pass, their bond deepens, and the attraction between them becomes undeniable. One night, as they walk together through the city after a date, Soo-ah feels her heart pounding. Acting on impulse, she decides to take his hand, the simple, timid gesture marking the moment when she finally accepts her feelings, setting her worries aside, at least for the moment. Ji-hoon, taken by surprise, clasps her hand in return, unable to hide his happiness. Yet the guilt continues to consume him. He knows he's risking a great deal by continuing the lie, but at that moment, nothing feels more important than being by her side. In the weeks that follow, their relationship reaches a new depth. They go to quiet places together: a hidden cafe, a small neighborhood bookstore, a park full of flowers. Ji-hoon tries to delay the inevitable revelation, knowing that the longer he waits, the harder it will be to tell her the truth. He knows he will eventually have to tell her who he really is, but he's terrified that everything they've built will shatter when that day comes. At the end of this phase, Ji-hoon feels completely torn. He knows that to stay with Soo-ah, he'll have to be honest, but the fear of losing the only real love he's ever known keeps him from making that choice. Soo-ah, on the other hand, starts to imagine a future with Min-soo, blissfully unaware that his reality is far different from what she believes. Both of them, caught in their own inner conflicts, continue walking side by side, not realizing that an unexpected revelation is about to change everything between them. Over the following weeks, Soo-ah and Ji-hoon's relationship grows deeper. They share smiles, stories, and dreams. Soo-ah begins to imagine a future with Min-soo, a simple, affectionate future. To her, Min-soo is exactly the kind of person she has always dreamed of: sincere, generous, and humble. She feels that with him, she can finally let go of her painful past. But behind this facade of simplicity, Ji-hoon is living in constant anguish, torn between the happiness he feels with Soo-ah and the fear of hurting her if he reveals his true identity. The situation begins to unravel one day when, during a visit to the hospital, Ji-hoon runs into a business acquaintance who happens to be there for a checkup. The man is surprised to see Ji-hoon dressed so simply, and before Ji-hoon can stop him, exclaims loudly, "Mr. Kang Ji-hoon, what are you doing here without your security?" Soo-ah, nearby, hears the name Kang Ji-hoon and is shocked. She looks at Min-soo, confused and in disbelief, trying to process the information. Ji-hoon tries to play it off, but it's too late. Soo-ah's expression shifts to one of hurt and disbelief. She feels like the ground has been ripped out from under her. "So, you're not Min-soo?" she asks, her voice trembling. "You're Kang Ji-hoon, the billionaire?" Ji-hoon tries to take her hands, but Soo-ah pulls them away, taking a step back. "Soo-ah, please listen to me. I can explain," he says, trying to stay calm, but the pain and guilt are evident in his eyes. "Explain what?" Soo-ah cuts him off, her voice breaking. "Explain how you lied to me all this time? Pretended to be someone else just to get close to me? What were you trying to prove, Ji-hoon? That you could play with the feelings of someone simple like me? Was it all just a game to you?" She backs away, unable to hold back her tears. The betrayal runs deep. Soo-ah had allowed him to break down the walls she had so carefully built. She believed she had found someone honest, someone she could trust. But now she feels utterly deceived. Ji-hoon tries to explain, but his words don't reach Soo-ah, who is too hurt to listen. She leaves the hospital, and he follows, but the pain in her face is unmistakable. He watches her walk away, knowing he has just lost the only person with whom he could be truly happy. He feels helpless, overwhelmed by regret and sorrow. In the days that follow, Soo-ah withdraws into a kind of emotional shock. The pain of betrayal cuts deep. She avoids the hospital, seeking refuge at a friend's house to keep herself from constantly thinking of Ji-hoon. Her memories of him, once sweet and genuine, now feel like sharp knives. The realization that everything was built on a lie is crushing. Meanwhile, Ji-hoon suffers in her silence. He tries to reach her, but Soo-ah ignores his calls and messages. Determined to make amends, Ji-hoon decides to expose himself in a way he never has before. He understands that to win her forgiveness, he needs to show her who he really is, without any masks. One rainy evening, he waits outside Soo-ah's house, standing in the cold rain. He remains there, motionless, unaffected by the weather, hoping she'll come home soon. When he finally sees her approaching, Soo-ah looks at him with a hard expression. She doesn't say anything, but her eyes convey everything she feels. He knows he has to fight to be heard. "Please, give me just a few minutes to explain," Ji-hoon begs, his voice filled with emotion. She remains silent but crosses her arms, indicating she'll listen, though her expression shows she doesn't believe a word he's about to say. "Soo-ah, I know I made a mistake, and I understand if you can't forgive me," he says, breathing deeply, his voice heavy with sorrow. "When we met, I was lost. My life was empty, full of people who only wanted something from me. And you helped me without expecting anything, without knowing who I was. For the first time, I felt like someone genuinely cared. And that's why you lied to me? Pretended to be someone else?" She interrupts, her voice laced with hurt. "You don't understand, Ji-hoon. I trusted you with my pain, with my past, and you just deceived me. How can I trust someone who toys with others' feelings?" He lowers his head, feeling the weight of her words, and continues. "I never wanted to play with your feelings, Soo-ah. When I realized I was falling for you, I was scared of losing you if you knew who I was. I wanted to be someone ordinary with you, someone you could love without thinking about my money or status. But now I understand that by doing that, I was a coward." Soo-ah watches him, her expression one of deep hurt. She struggles between the love she feels for him and the pain of being deceived. "I don't know, Ji-hoon. I don't know if I can forgive you," she murmurs, her eyes filling with tears. "I won't give up, Soo-ah." He looks at her earnestly, sincerity clear on his face. "I'll do whatever it takes to prove that you mean more to me than anything else. I just want a chance to show you who I am without lies." Soo-ah hesitates, but deep down, she still has feelings for him, for the person she thought he was, and who, even after the revelation, still holds a significant place in her life. Frustrated, she shakes her head and walks inside, leaving Ji-hoon in the rain, grappling with his choices and emotions he can't erase. In the days that follow, Soo-ah tries to move on, but Ji-hoon refuses to give up. He sends flowers, notes, and even recorded messages, admitting his mistakes and pleading for another chance. He begins making drastic changes in his life, donating part of his fortune to charity and helping people in vulnerable situations, acts that soon attract media attention. At first, Soo-ah is resistant, but she learns of Ji-hoon's actions and realizes he is genuinely trying to change. Still, the pain of betrayal keeps her from reconnecting with him. She knows it won't be easy to trust him again, but something inside her longs to believe he is being sincere. After the painful revelation, Ji-hoon is determined to show Soo-ah that he has changed and that his feelings for her are real. He understands that he can't simply ask for her forgiveness and expect everything to go back to normal. Instead, he begins taking drastic steps to prove he is willing to give up everything to be worthy of her love. First, Ji-hoon makes a shocking decision that stirs up high society and the business world. He temporarily steps down as CEO of his own company, appointing a vice president to take his place. His friends and colleagues try to convince him to reconsider, but he remains firm, refusing to change his mind. He wants to distance himself from everything that represents the power and status that separated him from Soo-ah. To him, stepping away is a way to show that money and influence are no longer his priority. Soo-ah learns about Ji-hoon's decision through the news. She sees a report on television where he declares that his temporary absence is part of a personal project. Without mentioning her name, Ji-hoon speaks about trying to understand the challenges and dreams of ordinary people. Soo-ah feels a stir of emotions as she watches him on the screen, and his words awaken a mix of feelings. Although she isn't ready to forgive him, she begins to see that he is genuinely changing and committing to being different. A few days later, Ji-hoon reaches out to an old mentor, Mr. Park, who had supported and taught him about the business world when he was still very young. Mr. Park runs a nonprofit organization that supports vulnerable communities by providing education and shelter. Humbly, Ji-hoon asks Mr. Park to let him work as a volunteer, anonymously, with the sole intention of giving back. Mr. Park watches him, surprised, but agrees to his request. He recognizes that Ji-hoon is trying to do something sincere and accepts to keep his involvement quiet. On his first day as a volunteer, Ji-hoon joins a project to renovate a daycare center in an underprivileged neighborhood. He swaps his business suit for a plain t-shirt and cap, wielding tools like any other worker. The experience is challenging for him, but in time he learns to appreciate the simple moments and authentic conversations he has with those around him. He realizes that these people's happiness and dignity aren't tied to money, but rather to the value of hard work and unity. With each passing day, Ji-hoon feels further from the man he used to be and closer to the version of himself he believes is worthy of Soo-ah. Soo-ah hears about Ji-hoon's volunteer work through people at the hospital who mention a billionaire now working in the city's poorer areas. Intrigued, she feels tempted to visit him, but she still hesitates. Her heart still aches, yet her curiosity and hope make her wonder if he truly is trying to redeem himself. Eventually, after weeks of keeping her distance, Soo-ah decides to visit the daycare center where Ji-hoon has been working. She's unsure of what to expect, but she believes that seeing what he's doing might help her understand his intentions. When she arrives, she sees him from afar, perched on a rooftop, hammering planks alongside other workers. He's covered in dust and sweat, but seems entirely absorbed in his work. Soo-ah stands at a distance, still hesitant to approach. She watches Ji-hoon smiling and talking with the other volunteers, helping children and even pausing to play with them in the yard. For the first time, Soo-ah notices a lightness and genuine happiness in his expression, something she has never seen before. Her heart beats faster, torn between hurt and hope. When Ji-hoon spots her, he's surprised but tries to mask his nervousness. He walks over to her and they stand facing each other in silence for a few seconds, neither quite knowing what to say. "Soo-ah," he says softly, "thank you for coming." "I came to see how you're doing," she replies, uncertain of how to handle this reunion. Ji-hoon takes a deep breath, gathering his courage, and begins to speak. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, and I'm not doing this to impress you. When you told me about your past, about how rich people had hurt your life, something shifted inside me. I realized how far my life was from reality, how my actions affected people. Being here, it's showing me a side of life I never knew existed." Soo-ah listens, moved. She can see that he's truly different, and that his gestures now are driven by authentic feelings. For the first time, she senses that the man beside her is not the arrogant, distant billionaire he used to be, but someone who cares deeply. After a pause, she finally asks, "And if I can never forgive you? If this pain never goes away?" Ji-hoon accepts the words with calm, understanding the possibility. "Then I'll keep doing this, whatever I can to be a better person, even if you never trust me again. The love I feel for you made me see how much I needed to change, and now, for the first time, I'm living the way I truly want to live." These words move her deeply. She says goodbye, still unsure but unable to deny that something inside her is softening. Week after week, Soo-ah hears more about Ji-hoon's actions and begins to wonder if she could someday learn to trust him again. Finally, after months of reflection and brief occasional conversations, Soo-ah decides to give Ji-hoon one last chance. She meets him at the park where they had one of their first outings and, with a shy smile, says, "If I give you a chance, will you promise to never lie again?" Ji-hoon smiles, surprised and relieved, taking her hand gently. "I promise, and I'll spend the rest of my life proving it to you if I have to." Soo-ah smiles, feeling her heart begin to open. She still carries scars, but she takes a step forward, choosing to leave the past behind and embrace the new Ji-hoon, who now proves to be a transformed man. With tears in their eyes and light hearts, they walk together, ready to begin a new chapter in their lives. After Soo-ah forgives him, Ji-hoon feels a renewed sense of hope and purpose. The two begin rediscovering each other, building a relationship based on truth and trust, free from secrets or masks. Ji-hoon decides to approach his relationship with Soo-ah cautiously, knowing that while he has earned her forgiveness, he needs to rebuild her trust day by day. With humility, he works to create a life that includes her in a simple, genuine way, far from the spotlight and the pressures of the business world. At first, they keep their relationship discreet. To avoid media exposure, Ji-hoon plans their dates in quiet, secluded spots. He takes her to a hidden botanical garden in the city, where they walk hand in hand, exchanging smiles and dreams about the future. These moments together are precious, and they both feel they are finally building something authentic, free from expectations and interests. During one of these conversations, Ji-hoon shares an old dream he's never revealed to anyone. He speaks of wanting to start a foundation to help vulnerable young people, offering educational and developmental opportunities for those who, like Soo-ah, have lost much, but have the desire to overcome hardship. For Ji-hoon, this project represents not only a new purpose, but also a way to connect with the real world and make a meaningful difference. "You inspired me, Soo-ah," he admits, holding her hand affectionately. "Meeting you and hearing your story made me realize that money can do so much more than just grow in a bank account. I want to use what I have to help, to make sure that young people have a chance at a better life." Soo-ah listens, moved. She sees that he truly has changed, and that his actions are now driven by genuine feelings. For the first time, she feels that the man by her side is no longer the arrogant billionaire she first met, but someone with a greater purpose. Seeing the sincerity in his eyes, Soo-ah knows she made the right choice in giving their love a new chance. Time passes, and Ji-hoon begins his foundation project, now with Soo-ah by his side, helping to plan the details. She suggests health programs for underserved communities inspired by her work at the hospital and actively contributes ideas and feedback. This partnership brings them even closer, strengthening the bond they have been rebuilding since the forgiveness. Despite the couple's new happiness and achievements, they face challenges. News of Ji-hoon's philanthropic project spreads, and soon the media renews its interest in his personal life, trying to uncover the identity of the mystery woman by his side. Although Ji-hoon and Soo-ah try to keep their relationship out of the public eye, the interest becomes inevitable. Paparazzi start following them, and soon articles begin to surface, speculating about Soo-ah's background, with some questioning her intentions with Ji-hoon. When Soo-ah sees these headlines, she's shaken. It reminds her of why she always mistrusted the world of the wealthy, and old traumas resurface. Sensing how much this exposure affects her, Ji-hoon decides to take a strong stance to protect her. In a press conference, he faces the reporters and declares that his personal life should not be a subject of public curiosity, and asks for respect for the person he loves. In a courageous move, he states, "Soo-ah is the most important person in my life, and my changes over the past months are because of her. What we're building is real, and I won't let comments and speculations interfere. I hope you will respect our privacy." This clear and direct stance by Ji-hoon impresses everyone and relieves Soo-ah, who feels once again the depth of his commitment to protecting what they have built. After this, the media and public begin to accept that Ji-hoon has indeed changed, and the pressure diminishes. Over time, rumors and curiosity about the couple fade, and they are finally able to live in peace. A few months later, Ji-hoon plans a special surprise for Soo-ah. He takes her to the place where she rescued him that rainy night, the alley where it all began. Smiling tenderly, he takes her hands and says, "Soo-ah, this is where you saved me. Not just that night, but in the months that followed. You helped me find myself and discover a new purpose." Then, he kneels, looking into her eyes as she watches him, tears of joy forming in her eyes. "I want to spend the rest of my life by your side. Not as a billionaire, but as an ordinary man who only needs you to be happy. Soo-ah, will you marry me? Soo-ah, smiling and moved, says yes. The moment is simple, yet it carries all the intensity and meaning of the journey they have shared. It is a declaration of sincere love and a promise that together they will face whatever challenges come. The wedding takes place in an intimate ceremony, attended only by close friends and family. Ji-hoon and Soo-ah exchange vows in a quiet setting, surrounded by people who have supported them. For both, the day symbolizes the conclusion of a journey of healing and the beginning of a new life, built on the values of truth, respect, and genuine love. After the wedding, the couple builds a life full of purpose and kindness. Soo-ah continues working as a nurse, while Ji-hoon manages the foundation, now focused on health and educational projects, something they developed together. They share the happiness and fulfillment of knowing they are making a difference in the world. In the years that follow, Soo-ah and Ji-hoon live a harmonious life devoted to love and goodness. The path they walked to reach that point was full of ups and downs, but each challenge taught them that true love can overcome any obstacle, even when two worlds seem so far apart. Now, more than ever, they know they have found in each other the support and inspiration to be the best versions of themselves. We hope you were moved by this incredible story of love, secrets, and overcoming. If you enjoyed following this journey full of twists and turns, leave a like and share with your friends who also love dramas. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to receive firsthand the most engaging and passionate stories. We want to know what you thought. Leave a comment saying what your favorite moment was. Until the next episode. See you there for more excitement and surprises.